If your hair is going gray and someone told you it's just genetics and there's nothing you can do about it, that is not the complete picture. Scientists identified the actual biological mechanism behind gray hair in 2009, a peer-reviewed study published in one of the most cited biology journals in the world. And that mechanism points to something specific that happens inside each hair follicle as you get older. Today, Suki is going to explain what that mechanism is, what 3 research-informed approaches can support it, and which of them has the strongest evidence behind it. Stay with us.
Now, let's get into the research. Right now, inside each gray hair follicle, a compound called hydrogen peroxide is building up and bleaching your hair pigment from the inside. Your body produces it naturally. Every hair follicle does. But as we age, the enzyme that breaks it down stops working as well as it used to.
Wait, hydrogen peroxide? Like the stuff people use to bleach their hair?
Exactly that, except your body is producing it internally, and there are 3 specific approaches the research links to supporting the biological system that manages it. That's what we're covering today, starting right now. The first approach is copper. Copper is a mineral your body needs to produce tyrosinase, the enzyme that converts an amino acid called tyrosine into melanin, which is the pigment that gives your hair its color. No copper means no functional tyrosinase. No tyrosinase means melanin production slows.
So copper is directly in the pigment production chain.
It's not just involved, it's essential. The enzyme that makes hair color literally requires copper to function. Research published in the International Journal of Dermatology found that copper ions are critical to tyrosinase activity and therefore to normal hair pigmentation. A 2012 Iranian study of participants with gray hair found their copper levels were measurably lower than their non-graying counterparts.
So which foods actually contain meaningful amounts of copper?
The highest sources are oysters. A single serving of oysters can provide more than your entire daily requirement for copper. After that, beef liver, shiitake mushrooms, dark chocolate with a high cocoa percentage, cashews, and sunflower seeds. These are not exotic ingredients. Most of them are already in a grocery store. The key point is that cooking methods matter. Copper is water-soluble, so boiling can reduce the content significantly. Steaming or eating raw, where appropriate, gives you more of it.
And how long before someone would notice any difference from addressing a copper deficiency?
Hair grows approximately 1 centimeter per month. If a follicle begins producing melanin again, and that's a significant if, because this depends on whether your graying is nutritionally driven, you would see it at the root of new growth within 6 to 8 weeks. The existing gray hair will not change color. Only new growth reflects what's happening at the follicle level right now. Realistic expectation. This is a months-long process, not a weeks-long one. The second approach connects directly to the hydrogen peroxide mechanism Marcus mentioned at the start. The enzyme your body uses to break down hydrogen peroxide is called catalase. Research published in the FASEB Journal, the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology, confirmed that gray hair follicles show dramatically reduced catalase expression. The hydrogen peroxide isn't the problem in itself. The problem is the loss of the enzyme that clears it.
So can you eat your way to more catalase?
Dietary catalase is not absorbed intact by the body. I want to be clear about that. What we're talking about is eating foods that support your body's own catalase production and protect it from degrading. Cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, are among the highest catalase-containing foods, and research suggests they also stimulate the body's endogenous catalase production. A study in the International Journal of Cancer Research found that animals fed cruciferous vegetables had sharply higher amounts of catalase in their livers compared to those that were not.
So we're talking about broccoli and kale for gray hair. That's not the sexiest remedy.
It's not, but it's one of the most biologically coherent ones. Broccoli sprouts specifically, not just mature broccoli, contain sulforaphane, which activates the NRF2 pathway, a key regulator of antioxidant enzyme production in the body. A randomized study published in a peer-reviewed journal found that broccoli sprout consumption led to measurable changes in antioxidant enzyme activity in participants. Practically, a daily serving of broccoli, kale, or cabbage, lightly steamed, not boiled to mush, is where the evidence points. It's not a silver bullet. It's a consistent dietary habit that supports a system your body already has.
And the honest expectation for how this works?
Supportive, not reversing. This is about slowing the progression of gray by maintaining the biological environment that supports pigment production, not undoing what's already gray. That distinction is important. We are not making a reversal claim here. The research does not support that. What it does support is that oxidative stress at the follicle level is a driver of graying, and diet can influence oxidative stress. That connection is real. The third approach is the most directly actionable for many people over 60. A case control study published in the International Journal of Trichology found that people with premature graying had significantly lower serum levels of vitamin B12, folic acid, and biotin compared to controls. And this is particularly relevant after 60 because B12 absorption decreases significantly with age. Your stomach produces less of a protein called intrinsic factor, which is required to absorb B12 from food.
So it's not just about what you eat. It's about what your body can absorb at this stage of life.
That's exactly right. Absorption of B12 from food declines measurably after 50. This is why the National Institute on Aging specifically recommends that adults over 50 consider supplemental B12 or B12 fortified foods, not because B12 will reverse gray hair, but because deficiency is common in this age group, and deficiency has been linked to multiple hair health changes, including color. The same study found that folate, which you get from leafy greens, beans, and citrus, was also significantly lower in the graying group. Biotin, found in eggs, nuts, and whole grains, showed a similar pattern.
And what's the practical step here for someone watching?
The most useful first step is not to go and buy supplements. The most useful first step is to ask your GP for a blood panel that includes B12, folate, and ferritin. These are standard tests. If you're deficient, correcting a deficiency is one of the genuinely modifiable factors in this picture. If you're not deficient, supplementing further has no additional benefit for hair color. That nuance matters. We are not recommending supplementation across the board. We are recommending finding out whether you need it.
Let's go deeper on the hydrogen peroxide finding because I think most people watching have never heard this.
Most people haven't. In 2009, a team of researchers at the University of Bradford published a study in the FASEB Journal, one of the most widely cited biology journals in the world. They used a technique called FT Raman spectroscopy to examine gray and white hair follicles in vivo. What they found was that gray hair shafts were accumulating hydrogen peroxide in millimolar concentrations. To give you a sense of how significant that is, the same concentration that people purchase commercially to bleach hair.
So the hair is literally being bleached from the inside.
From the inside. The editor-in-chief of the FASEB Journal at the time described it this way: all of our hair cells make a tiny bit of hydrogen peroxide, but as we get older, this little bit becomes a lot. We bleach our hair pigment from within. That is not a wellness blog paraphrase. That is a direct quote from a scientist summarizing peer-reviewed findings.
And what's the limitation of this research?
The limitation is that the study identified the mechanism, the what and why, but it did not produce a tested human intervention that reverses it. Identifying the mechanism is enormously valuable. It tells us where to look. It does not mean that any single food or supplement has been proven in a clinical trial to restore pigmentation in adults over 60. That distinction is critical. The mechanism is established. The intervention pathway is still being researched.
What about the copper research? Is there a direct study that shows eating more copper-rich foods changes hair color?
Not a clean interventional trial of that specific kind, no. What exists is strong mechanistic evidence. We know copper is essential for tyrosinase. We know tyrosinase is essential for melanin. We know copper-deficient individuals show altered pigmentation. And we have observational studies showing lower copper levels in people with gray hair. A 2012 study found that participants with gray hair had serum copper levels averaging around 90 micrograms per deciliter, compared to approximately 105 in the non-graying control group. That is a meaningful difference, but observational data tells us there is a correlation. It does not prove that supplementing copper reverses gray hair. The causal direction requires more research.
So we're honest about where the evidence is strong and where it's still emerging.
Always. And the B12 research is actually the most clinically actionable of the three, precisely because deficiency is so prevalent after 60 and correction is so straightforward. The trichology study that found lower B12, folate, and biotin in the gray hair group was a case control study, 52 participants, so the sample size is small and the findings need to be replicated at scale. But they are consistent with what we know about B12's role in cellular health, DNA replication, and the production of amino acids that hair follicles use.
The take from all of this for someone who has been watching and is now wondering what to actually do first. What's the honest summary?
3 things in order of evidence and practicality. First, get your B12, folate, and ferritin tested. It's a standard blood panel, it's inexpensive, and if you're deficient, which is genuinely common after 60, correcting it addresses a real and modifiable factor. Second, add copper-rich foods to your diet consistently: oysters, beef liver, mushrooms, cashews. Not as a cure, as a nutritional foundation for the biological system that produces pigment. Third, increase cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, which support your body's own antioxidant enzyme production, including catalase. None of these are dramatic. All of them are grounded in published research. And none of them will restore hair that is already gray. They support what's happening at the follicle in new growth going forward. Almost there. One more thing before we wrap up. Before we close, a few things I want to say clearly. If your graying has been rapid, if it's accompanied by hair loss rather than just color change, or if it started suddenly in a short period of time, those are signs worth discussing with your doctor or a dermatologist, not addressing with dietary changes alone. Sudden changes in hair color can sometimes reflect thyroid function changes, autoimmune conditions, or other medical factors that deserve professional attention. The research we've covered today applies to gradual, age-related graying, the kind that most people over 60 experience over years, not the kind that appears suddenly in patches or in association with other symptoms. And as always, everything we've covered today is for general education. It's not medical advice, and it's not a substitute for a conversation with your own doctor. If anything we've discussed feels relevant to your situation, that conversation is always worth having.
If this was useful, the like button genuinely helps more people find it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss next week. Suki is going into the specific foods and nutrients that research links most consistently to hair thinning after 60, and the ones that most people in this age group are quietly deficient in. You will not want to miss that one. See you then.